district to promote growth, not just academic, but social emotional. Working really hard on our collaborative relationships across with the city, private and public sectors, and now especially with the academies coming online. Those are beneficial for our school district and for the city as a whole. And then, of course, responsible resource allocation, making sure that we are providing transparent, coherent, and efficient budget process, which we hope you'll find that we've done that tonight. The key line in that is equitable distribution of resources to sustain the district's vision and mission. And again, over the last couple of years, we've had some ups and downs, but we're looking to do a one-time reset and get us back on track heading in. So we will move right along here. Not the most friendly clicker here. Okay. You saw this in one of our last finance workshops. Some of the numbers have changed a little bit. For those of you who are new, especially 2 early childhood centers, 13 elementary schools, 3 middle schools, 2 high school campuses, two large high school campuses, and 2 alternative programs. Our multilingual learner population hovers around 36%, so our economically disadvantaged around 53%, and our students with disabilities holding steady at 15%. However, some of the needs of the students that are within that 15% have grown. Our overall enrollment has just very recently dipped down now below 11,400. We are at 11,397. So even from the last time that we spoke, our numbers are going down. We haven't seen numbers like this since 2016, 2017 school year. Okay. You can see the trend line, again, has dipped down since the last time that we've spoken. We peaked around 2023, 2024, had some marginal decrease, and then a pretty significant drop comparatively for what we normally see trending in our district. So that number of the drop was about 617 students. About 443 of those students are second language learners or MLL students. So we're continuing to monitor that population, their needs, and the patterns for both registration and for students who are leaving the school district. Our special education numbers, again, are holding steady. We have about 1,765. We anticipate a similar number next year, plus or minus a few students. So some wonderful things to celebrate in our school system, okay? We have had a tremendous amount of work completed over the last couple of years, culminating in our Academy campus opening. Very exciting. I think you all witnessed the tremendous efforts that went into that. We're very proud of that. In addition to just the building opening, we're the first wall-to-wall academy in the Northeast. We are getting a lot of accolades and acclaim right now. We're being asked to speak to the work that we've been doing across it's very exciting for the staff and those who are involved to be able to share the work that's happening and also to learn more about what others are doing and how they're trying to lift this model as well. So we're very excited and very proud of that. We have over 100 industry partners and growing. As a result, our Career Fair Expo continues to grow, and all of those are continued opportunities for partnerships. We've grown a teacher residency program here, and just over the last year, it has doubled. So we have a couple of different pipeline streams to help with some of our workforce needs and to build our own and grow our own educators here to help with our recruitment efforts as well there. We are very proud that we're the Connecticut State Teacher of the Year home. We're home base is for Brian Beddish, so we are very proud of that. And again, it's a testament to some of the great work and the leadership that surrounds all of the programming that we do here. And we're also very proud of the fact that we are actively increasing our STEM programming K-8, most notably very recently in 6-8 and bolstering those programs as well. So there's a lot to celebrate there. Our schools also very proud of our schools of distinction status. So across the state, particularly in Alliance districts, these are not easy to achieve. We have 4 schools: Great Plain, King Street, Primary, South Street, and Western Connecticut Academy of International Studies. And those staff across all of our schools have worked very hard. But these schools, as you know and as we presented before, have earned a special distinction for the extra efforts in those areas in terms of our accountability index, growth in proficiency performance on our state accountability assessments. Our accountability index growth has been marked at 2.5% of a gain district-wide. That is great, considering where we've been and where we're trying to go. So our efforts are paying off system-wide. We have pockets that are growing at faster rates than others, and we're going to continue to work on those. Chronic absenteeism decrease, 9.2% since 2021. We're at 14.3% currently, and the state average is at 17.2%. So we are not just hovering around the state average, we are crushing the state average right now. And a lot of that has to do with the work that the schools have put in and coordinated and led by efforts with Kelly. Whereas Kelly to my left, Karen Wanzer, her team, and then of course the work that's happening in the schools to reach out to families and to make those important connections. Our graduation rate, though now publicly released, so I can't say that this is a fixed number, but we are projected to be at 83%. So we are up from 77% in 23-24. That's a very marked difference. We've been on a kind of a decline going the other way, so reversing that number and growing is great. So we look forward to exploring that, presenting a little bit more on that when we do the accountability results overview in the curriculum meeting coming up in the near future. We have over 100 students earning the seal of biliteracy on record. We believe that's about closer to 159 once they're done accounting for how it's accounted for through the accountability. And we are very proud of the fact that we are expecting 1,390 students to gain an industry-recognized credential by the end of the year, which is fantastic. We want to double, triple, quadruple that number each year and continually grow that out. As you know, we've made very good use of our implementation and the resource of adding the Science of Reading programming in the form of our ArtCore curriculum. Over the last 3 years, kindergarten has increased 17% on the end-of-year benchmark, which is DIBELS, and from 22 to 23 and through 24-25, resulting in our 24-25 having 63% of kindergarten that were at or above benchmark, which is great. And that's going to mean that as our base grows stronger and that rolls through the school system, we should start to see those numbers start to affect our larger accountability index numbers. So we're very excited about those efforts. Some nice little points to, how are we spending some of our operational money? How are we working with the city? So we've had some great progress over the last year and a half. DHS West, the science room renovation, these are in collaboration with the city, and we're very thankful for the partnership. BMS Counseling Center, we've tiled the floor. Mill Ridge and KSI pod flooring replaced and upgraded. Ellsworth roof replacement from the city. Haystown elevator construction is still underway. The stadium lights, auditorium seating, DHS Main Academy refresh and painting, Pembroke floor replacement, AIS retaining wall. That's largely on the city side, but these are things that are happening in consultation and collaboration with the city. And of course, our KSB playground fence. Why are these things important? Because the learning environment in our facilities matter. How kids feel about their school, their grounds, and how teachers feel about those matter. And so these are really important, and it's part of our work together besides the big academic things that we usually focus on. So where are we with our current state of funding? So for this school year, I'd just like to do a quick review of what our budget looks like this year in terms of what we set for this fiscal year, as well as what we have in our grants and then some of our reserves. So as you can see, we had a budget this year of $172 million and change, and the preponderance of that is in salaries and benefits, and you can see in other purchase services. So if you look at the pie chart, that is largely how we operate. Our main expense are salaries and benefits. So hold on to that 102 number in your head and the 34 million in benefits, because those numbers are going to change a little bit in our proposal, and we'll explain why that is so. Our grants versus general fund, so we rely very heavily on grants funding. So 25.9% of our funding sources to operate that have core staff in it are funded through grants. So in total, between our 172 and our 60 million, we have 232 million in operations. So there's quite a bit of money that flows to the district, and all of those are funding sources that create a very complex but robust way to sustain the district. Of those grant sources, we have 50 million that come from the state directly, 9.3 that come from federal, and about 635,000 from other sources. That other source line changes daily, small grants that come in, little awards, one-time funds, competitive grants, and I'll show you some examples of those, for a total of 60 million. And of the state amount, if you look at the green pie chart, of the 60 million, 50 is state, but 39.5 million is Alliance, which is a significant portion of what we do. So we have a lot of staff in our Alliance grant, and that is how we get our ECS, a portion of our ECS that comes directly to us, but those are also restricted funds, meaning we can't just spend on whatever we want. We have to make sure that it's in line with the scope of the grant, and it goes through an approval process with the state. So in Alliance itself, so drilling down a little bit in Alliance, because Alliance is a key player in our finances, of the 39.5 million in Alliance, you can see that we have 26.3 million in salaries slated and 7.9 million in benefits. Only about 5.3 million in the grant for next year will be allocated to supplies, professional development, and some other operational items that we use. So that is a large, significant portion of the grant is salaries and benefits. I just wanted to get a sense of how that grant is used. In terms of our federal grants, you can see the myriad of entitlement grants that we have: Title I, Title II, 3, 5, IDEA, Title IV, and so on. Some of the grants that we're a little concerned about that we mentioned in previous meetings on the titles of anything that's really formula-based, but also things that have been talked about in the news as possibly being in jeopardy, like Title I, Title II, Title III. We had heard that Title II was going away. We recently got a notice that things were kind of had flatlined and they're not going to be touched next year. So we're continuing to monitor what that looks like. But where we could have some issues is with our second language learner population dropping and a high needs population dropping, and those being a large part of our formulas for titles, we could see a dip off in some of the grants next year, and we won't really know that until those grants open back up. But we have accounted for that in this budget, and I'll get to that in a moment. And again, here's a list of our largest state grants that we have, about 45 million outside. So family resource, school readiness. School readiness is is a pass-through grant, so we're the fiduciary, but we don't actually operationalize those staff. State adult ed, bilingual grant, priority school district, interdistrict magnet. That's the magnet grant that supports our current AIS program, and a few other extended school, summer school grants. Our other grant category right now currently has some, they could be private grants, they could be one-time funds, temporary funds, awards from the state, from competitions. You can see these are not reliable grants by any stretch, and they're more often very, very, very temporary. That number changes on a monthly basis. Okay. Surpluses and reserves. We don't usually talk about this in our normal budget workshop. However, I think it's a little bit of an elephant in the room when we talk about surpluses. So again, no secret that we have turned up a few surpluses over the last couple of years, and through a lot of our auditing learnings and through better control of what we're doing and getting our handle on the financial aspects of things, accounting for turnover, even our finance department. I believe Mike is number 5 in a very short time period. But we have a great team that's in place right now, and thank you, Angela, for coming, our assistant finance director. There's a lot of folks working very hard to clean up years of what can only be described as a little bit of a back-end mess. So we're cleaning up some of those things. But in the process of that, in the last 2 years, legislation has allowed us to retain all superintendents, all school boards, to retain 2% of any surplus that emerges. And so for us, sort of the the blessings, if you will, that in this situation is that we do have some reserves set aside on the board side from the last couple of years. So from 2023 to 2024, we've got about 2.8 million, 24, 25, about 3, and potentially 3 at 2% at 24, 25, but those are unaudited numbers. So we'll monitor those, but there is a healthy reserve in the background, and that will be important as we talk about what our ask is and our margins that we're going to be operating from. In addition to the district 2% reserves, we have a very healthy, fully maxed out health stop-loss reserve of about $10.4 million. So we are fully maxed out there, which is great. And why we have to carry that, that's a requirement. So that because we are self-insured, so if we should dip down or have a tough year, that there is a reserve held that we can go to the city for to have some of those funds released as part of our needs. We haven't really had to do that in my recent memory, as far as I know, but it is there for that purpose should we need it. So there is some tolerance in our risk. Some other things important to note that is basically how we have been making improvements and how we approach the budgeting process. Heading forward. So we've spent a lot of time behind closed doors. We've spent a lot of time working with some other folks outside of our team and in partnership with the city to really discussing finances, drilling down in our practices, and looking at procedurally how we come and arrive at the numbers and make the decisions that we make. As you know, again, in the surplus, a lot of it has to do with our salaries and benefits and a few other places that we needed some improvement on. But outside of that, our standing practice every year, historical practice, is that we budgeted a budget to budget. So if we had 102 million in salaries last year, we added 5% to account for most of the salaries, and we would roll that forward. A little less strategic than how we're going to be operating now moving forward, but we never really had the margins to play with, so that was always a little bit of a safer route in how we budgeted, and not uncommon in other school districts. We had unfilled and underfilled vacancies that really became somewhat ongoing, a little bit perpetual in some cases, but in most cases we've had a lot of churn in our district like everybody else in the last few years. We've always used aggressive healthcare benefit projections. So when you're working with actuarials, they give you a range. Here's the number of people that you have, here's your high and here's your low, and we've always erred on the higher side to be safe, which is probably why we've never ever had to use reserves. And also we've rolled up department budgets. Those are being scrutinized a little bit differently. We've had large swings in our finances, huge amounts of ESSER money, ARPA money, Alliance, ECS increases very quickly, $9 million. So those things tend to also wreak havoc in creating a lot of movement in the system that is a little bit difficult to keep track of. Moving forward, we did a lot of work with projection to budget, and it was something that even I had to get a little bit used to. No, but this is what you're actually spending, at the end of the day. And so we make projections based on the actuals as opposed to what our hopes, right? Actuals versus our hopes. And certainly we hope to fill all of our positions every day and every year, but it doesn't always happen. And so there's a little pattern there that we need to start accounting for. And with that, we're taking a very close analysis of unfilled and underfilled positions and moving towards a more conservative healthcare benefit projection, recognizing that not all the staff is here, but also projecting down on the more conservative side. Doing work on adjusting those budgets and then calculating and absorbing cost and using grants very strategically in a much more, I think we're using a scalpel maybe instead of a sledgehammer, perhaps. Okay, overall, you will see a very marginal ask representing 1.75% increase to our budget to budget. The increase is $2.9 million. We would be needing $175 million. That would be our ask to the city for 2026, 2027, and I will break that down for you. So overall, we would need about $106 million in salaries, $27 million in benefits. That number dropped significantly. We'll walk you through that. $4.7 million in professional services, about $2 million in purchase property, about 24, almost 25 million in purchase services, 6.3 in supplies, 1.6 in enrollment, and 839 in dues and fees. So these are the categories that you see in your financials when we have the finance committee meeting. So those are the same buckets. And so we're just wanting to make sure you saw where those fell. The drivers within that number are as follows on this slide. So contractual increases are at 5.4 million. And I have a slide for each of these, so we'll go over what constitutes each one of the drivers. New positions, which is mainly driven by the last phase of DHS West and some other incremental positions across the system, are about 1.14. Title grant absorption, so taking into account for any dip in the grants that we might receive, where we also have staff, we're taking into account about $500,000. Transportation costs have definitely gone up. We have 2.7 million there. Tuition for special education and other programs. Professional services up 1.5 million. Other across the system, which is really incremental, and some adult ed is 21,000, pardon me. And then all of that is offset by a total benefit reduction of 6.79 million. So that's a real change in how we're managing the projection for benefits. And we've also taken some of our staff, and we are offsetting them and sliding them into grants. We happen to have some room in Alliance. There are some strategies that we weren't doing because we couldn't get some of the staffing, so we were able to slide in some positions into Alliance, and also Alliance was able to absorb its own increases for next year. I'll walk you through each one of these in the preceding slides, but the total of that, the washout, is $3 million, and that would be our ask to the city to cover that. So looking at contractual increases, you can see that we have almost all of our contracts up to date. There's been a tremendous amount of work in negotiating those contracts. Those have been very robust conversations around recruitment and retention, and we think we've developed a really fair and balanced and measured approach to our contracts across the system. We have nurses that are almost ready to be to be finalized, hopefully. And then our paraeducator contract, which feels like we just did that one. That was an opener, but now the contract, they're ready to demand to bargain again for the actual regular contract series. So that is also coming up. So you can see that we have those laid out for you, and those are roughly averages across all of the different positions within those bargaining groups. New positions are as such, so we have, this is probably one of the least amount of new positions that we've asked for in several years, even though we're opening still the last phase of the high school. And that is because we do have openings, and we'll be filling a lot of those first and working on that. But we have 2 SPED positions in there, 1 resource at the high school, 1 BCBA, between the middle school and the high school as well, so district-wide across the system, an increase of a half-time position for security, IT, and tech. That is key cards, scanners, especially this building alone could probably use its own person for the technology that's here and the safety. ACE needs a slight increase in a section of an elective, so that will be in art. REACH REACH actually needs another teacher to help round out some of their graduation needs, make it a little bit easier for scheduling, and to provide more academics for the students that are there. So this is in addition. We had already, I believe, added another social worker, Cal, to that. I keep looking over here for some reason, but to the Endeavor side this year, yeah. So they're quite rounded out at this point, but this is the last phase of that to really bring them to a really good functional spot. West Side Middle School is short a special area teachers. Those sections are running very high, and it's causing issues with their ability to schedule and plan. So a 1.0 FTE special area teacher. They also need a little more psych support. That building was a little light, so 0.4 psych. At AIS, we're looking to add a half-time Spanish teacher. The new principal is up and running and raring to go to fulfill the theme of international studies. And to do that, we've lost some Spanish, some ground over there over the last couple of years, so we're looking to bolster that back and to spread that out across the grade levels. Great Plain needs a half-time social worker. to add to some of the needs that are at that school. One para for ESL at Haystown. They have a growing population there. It's possible that with some of the dip in the other numbers that we might have the ability to move some other staff around. But right now there is a need, so we're not quite there just yet. DHS Maine, this is where the bulk of some of the staffing occurs. So DHS Maine will need a business and comp sci teacher and a counselor. And at DHS West, they'll need, this is in the general fund, and I have another slide for the Lions. They'll need an English teacher, a physics teacher, art teacher, and a counselor on the West Campus. And these are a few additional positions, but we put these in Alliance so they don't actually hit the general fund. And that is an additional counselor. And right now, Kelly and I are discussing whether that's going to be a crisis counselor or a regular main counselor, depending on the caseload once the students finish registering between both campuses. Emerging Technology and Entrepreneurship Academy Director and a secretary, because we're bringing on the third academy. That's part of the opening on that campus. And then one senior maintenance tech. So we have a lot of technology on the campus and not enough staff to actually help service. And then lastly, district-wide and Alliance is an accounts payable coordinator and a school lunch supervisor. There's an asterisk next to the school supervisor because that may end up, if the school lunch fund, our school lunch fund is mainly self-sustaining. So there may be some room to incorporate that FTE in its own account, but we'll know that a little bit closer to the end of the year. So we see how we run through with the opening of this campus and how we end our year. Okay, so in total, in Alliance, there'll be $665,334. That includes the benefits. So Alliance will absorb those staff and off the general fund books, if you will. Okay. Title grant absorption. Here's the $500,000. Though that's a risk assumption based on enrollment and formula for MLs and high needs, and kind of already explained that one. But you can see the different grants that could be affected. Transportation is a biggie. We're anticipating about 8 additional buses with the expansion, mostly because there'll be more kids going to West. Some of that will double up some of the overlap with West Side, and kids will be coming from different parts of the city. We might need 9 buses, we might need 7. So we have 8 right now projected, and we'll make those adjustments at the end of the year. There's an extra mini bus or 2 in there as well that is needed. The big number in there also is our annual STA contract increase. So we're anticipating, actually we're contracted for about 6% over the next couple of years, year over year. So that will continue to go up pretty steadily, and it's a number for sure. We also have increases to daily buses and of course special education transportation needs as well, incorporating that 2.7. Tuition, we are up on tuition incrementally, everybody. It's the pain across the state. Special education tuition is up. And likewise, so are many of the other programs across the state. So we have some incremental. We have a few students that go to Chapag. We have students that go to other magnet schools around the state. 1 student here, 2 students there. We pay tuition, and their rates also have gone up. So it's not a lot. The bulk is really around special ed. And then professional services, that account line, that number is up $1.5 million, largely driven by agency staffing. So where there's some less in our salary line next year, there'll be a little more in the agency line. So we're proactively planning for the fact that we've been struggling to get DPS bodies in place and have had to use agencies. So rather than have those staff members sit in our salary line and in our benefits line, and then have to use agencies while we've already projected for those, a portion of those are being removed and added right where we think we're going to end up, they're going to end up being. That doesn't mean that we're going to stop actively working towards hiring a lot of staff that we've had issues. We've already been very successful. Very recently, there's been a lot of contract buyouts, and we're getting some of those agency staff to convert over because our contract is just that much better than it was before, and we hope to continue on that progress. We won't be perfect next year, but we'll gradually start to make that conversion, but we're proactively planning for that now so that those health benefits aren't sitting in our account at the end of the year. These are a little more incremental. Adult ed has an increase ask of 230,000. Very important, we've needed to increase our cost share. There's other surrounding towns that contribute to the adult ed programming, and Danbury has the most amount of students in the program, and our cost share was not quite where it needed to be from a percentage standpoint, so we've increased that. It'll increase again next year, so we're doing it in kind of two half measures. And then the remaining number of delta between 321 and 230 are just incrementals across all systems that add up $1,000, $500 here and there. So all of those asks are offset by our benefit reduction of $6 million and $6.7 million. I'm going to turn it over to Mike in a moment. There was a lot of thought that went into this in terms of how we're going to, hedge on some of the benefits that we've typically benefited for in the past. So I'll turn it over to Mike.
Thanks, Kara. When we speak about benefits, I think most of us think about healthcare, dental, and vision, and that certainly is a large part of this. But in our line items, the term benefit really applies to much more. So one of the first accounts that we have inside benefits is Social Security. Employees that we have that don't pay into TRB are subject to Social Security tax. So we do have a modest increase there, and that's to reflect the anticipated increase in salary for those folks, as well as the fact that on a year-to-date basis, our run rate is a little bit over the budget. So we had a modest increase of $115,000 there. I'm going to skip over the Cigna Health lines just for now and come back to that because that's the largest portion. The Teamsters that we pay, their insurance, their health, their dental, and their medical are paid through the Teamsters, and then we pay the Teamsters. So they're not part of our Cigna plan. Last year, we budgeted about $2 million for their health insurance. This year, we had our benefits coordinator go through by head count and take into account the year-over-year increase and apply that. So budget to budget, year over year, it's about a $280,000 increase. Dental, I'll get to when I talk to Cigna and Health. And then LTD, long-term disability and life, it's actually a small decrease. The contract rates haven't been renegotiated yet, but we expect it to be about a $134,000 decrease from last year's budget. The main driver here, what we're looking at, is Cigna. We utilize Gallagher, who's a third-party consultant, to help us liaise with Cigna and determine what our rates are going to be. They have a large team of actuaries that pore over our data. They look at the actual year-to-date, and then they look back historically. They take a weighted average of all of our actual claims and project that out onto the next year. Last year, when Finance and Human Resources was doing the budget, we knew that there were a lot of open positions, and we were going to put those positions in the budget. So if we were going to put them in the budget, it only made sense that we account for their benefits too. The problem with that is when an individual is anticipated to be hired in the budget and they don't come, we wind up with a favorable variance, not only in the salaries, but also in the benefits. The benefits number we're using is somewhere around $29,000 to $30,000. So you could imagine all of those open positions that we had last year that we were budgeting for that led to a significant increase. So this year, when they came to us with their original numbers, we calculated everything out, and we asked them to go back and to be less conservative, more aggressive with their assumptions. We asked them to take out from their projections any open positions. So we used the actual number of staff that's currently here as our base. That reduction from the open positions that we budgeted for last year to this year led to an overall decrease, not only in the actual claims cost that the actuaries accounted, but there's also administrative fees that we pay Cigna for, how I say, the pleasure of being Cigna. And I think that's largely based on headcount. So that number, the fixed cost, also decreased. There's another portion of the Cigna actuarial data, and it's you'll see it as usually I call it RX, but it's our pharmacy rebate. So Cigna is able to contract with various pharmacies to get us rebates. Usually comes about mid-year. Last year, that rebate was budgeted out at $1.8 million. This year, when they went back, the number came back at 2.8. So they're expecting a large increase in rebate. So the rebate goes up, which means our cost goes down. That alone is $1 million swing budget to budget year over year. And then the last portion, when Kara and I went back and asked Gallagher to be more aggressive with their number, in their actuarial sheet, they give a fluctuation margin. They call it about 5%. It's a fudge factor, is what it is. Excuse me. We asked them to reduce that, one, to see what the actual cost would be, but it doesn't look like, based upon our surpluses, that we've ever needed that fluctuation margin. So we asked them to reduce that out. Last year's fluctuation margin was about $1.2 to $1.3 million. So when they take that out year over year, we see another decrease. All of those added up, even though we have a small increase for the Teamsters and a small increase for Social Security, brings us to the negative $6.79 million. So it's an overall benefits decrease. And now the question is, well, if you're going to add new positions, like you said you were, the 1.18 back to the general fund, are you budgeting benefits for them? Yes, we are. Last year, when we budgeted for these open positions, we used a 35% benefit load, which means we take the salary, we multiply by 35%, and we assume that that is going to be pretty much more or less the benefits expense that we're going to experience. This year, we were a little bit, again, more aggressive. We dropped that down to 30. And that is reflected in our actuals year after year. We're looking at our actual cost to salaries year over year. It is less than the 35%. So we are budgeting benefits for those open positions, but at a lower rate. Now, as you look at the salaries across the system, they range quite widely. So 30% is very different for an administrator that's making, say, $90,000 than perhaps a paraeducator. And that is true, but we use it on average. So it's an average figure, and it works out to be pretty close.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. I know it's a lot. Getting a little glassy, so I'll keep going here. Okay, so an additional $2.7 million in savings. That is coming from moving from the general fund, moving some of our vacant openings to grants. And so those will be slid into Alliance. We have about 16 positions or so that we're offloading from the general fund into grants. And we're still going to try to fill those positions. However, if by the time we submit the grant, we have 4 or 5 of those positions that are still vacant, we won't put them in the grant as vacancies. We'll just plan for those funds to be used differently, more resources, support, supplies, whatever, in another direction for the year. Because what happens is once September rolls around, the likelihood of filling certain positions dramatically decreases. And so we'll hold those in abeyance, kind of put them in the parking lot and revisit them again during the prime hiring season. So we're offloading about 16 positions or so into the Alliance where there's some tolerance in there. And there's a variety of positions. And they're grant eligible, so we shouldn't have any issue with those. They're strategically picked to support the strategies that are already there. In addition to that, how we've kind of accounted for things. So if on a district snapshot on any given day, if we were to look at the number of openings, we could have almost anywhere between $4 and $6 million of vacancies sitting on the books at any given time. Some of those are hard to fill, And some of those are just the natural churn of a large district, right? There's an expected percentage in any large organization where at any given time someone resigns, it takes time to fill, and there's always a certain number that sits on the books. So we're going to take advantage of the fact that that is just true, that we will always have some number on the books that we're looking to fill. We're going to take 2.75, as I mentioned, and move them into grants. We've been proactive in agencying out 1.7 million. Most of those are in Kelly's bucket. That is the reality-based, not accounting for the benefits in that case. And then taking another vacant group of about $1 million and leaving them in general fund, but then work to aggressively fill those and kind of strategize around those positions. So it still leaves some positions and some dollars back off the books, but pretty similar to maybe how the airlines overbook a little bit, knowing that not everybody shows up. That's pretty much the strategy and the thought process. So at any given time of the vacancies, if we account for at least 7 or 10% of those not being filled at any given time, there's a savings that we get back in the district. That's kind of off book, if you will. And we hope to improve that. There's been a lot of work. We've taking on residency programs and working on build our owns. We've hired someone directly in charge of working on recruitment and retention to help build capacity there, because we've grown in a lot of ways. In some places, we've outgrown our ability to sustain, and especially with the economy and the market the way that it is. We're not the only district struggling to fill, but that just means we have to step up our recruitment efforts a little bit more aggressively to keep up. So we have some savings there. As a budget overview, when you put it all together, looking at FY26 to 27, we laid it out in sort of chart style so you can see how those numbers play up against one another. So the original, which is this year, is 172. The request next year is 175. The difference is the 2.9 for about 1.75. It's really 1.74 with a lot of numbers after that, but we've rounded it up to 175. Okay. And just as a comparison to surrounding towns, superintendents like to check in with one another on what the asks are, and these are the published asks from our area superintendents. As you can see, we're dramatically lower than our area counterparts, but we also have some budget resetting to do. So that's what that is reflective of. It's not that we don't have needs, it's just that we definitely have some areas to reset. We've done that through this budget, and we're hoping that, we're full sail ahead with our strategies, our missions, and our vision. And this is mostly there's a lot of one-time reset in here, but for this year, we'll take the win on a smaller ask, but that also satisfies the needs of the district. And lastly, there are assumptions in the budget, right? That the enrollment stays the same. So we go into this, we start building these budgets in maybe December after sitting with schools and analyzing our trends and our needs. And we know that things change between now and June. So the budget assumes that enrollment and the students that we have remain stable as is. The health profile of the people that currently work here remains the same. Our labor market trends continue to be the way that they are right now. And that any emergencies that we have that encounter across the system can be handled within our own budget. So for example, if we get a leak and Rich Jalbert's able to repair it with his current budget, that's great, maybe unanticipated. If we have a cybersecurity attack, God forbid, or something very significant, that's definitely a game changer. Special education tuition is always always has a level of volatility. A couple of students can change a budget over by $1 million with out-of-district placements. So those are things that can swing budgets. And any state or federal changes that come down the line, provided that, outside of the $500,000 that we're taking into account and trying to be proactive about, if anything beyond that, we, of course, would affect our budget. We are, I believe, I'm calling this a razor's edge budget. Heading into the year, but with some of the reserves that we had, I think we can afford to test our budget strategy here a little bit. be responsible, and at the same time, take care of the needs of the school system. And just as a final note, this was a, $3 million ask is, I can't remember the last time we've had a low ask of that nature. But heading into next year, Alliance is flat funded. We had some tolerance in the grant this year. So Alliance was able to absorb its own increases this year. Alliance has been moving up every year and as part of the acceleration catch-up. Next year, unless there's some legislation, unless they put an inflation factor, cost of living factor in there, any increase in Alliance, at $39.5 million, add 5% to that amount needs to be handled by the general fund, so right off the bat. And then, of course, at 175, the district has increases of, let's just say, a flat 5% heading for 27, 28. Those are double-digit numbers when you combine all of those things together. So, something definitely to keep our eye on, to discuss over the next couple of, budget cycles here. But for right now, our ask is 175 at 1.75% to the city.
Thank you,
right.
Kara.
Questions?
Questions? Yes. Anybody have questions? Anybody? Go ahead, Kate.
I'm not sure my question. First of all, thank you very much for the presentation. And I just wanted to really appreciate the slide that talks about our grants versus our general fund and breaks down what we actually have as a working budget for our district, because it's not just the general fund, it's also this 25% that folks work very hard to bring in those grants to our district and to make sure that we're taking advantage of every opportunity we can. So I just wanted to appreciate that slide. I guess my question is more about what's happening at the state level right now. In addition to the flat funding for the ECS that the governor has proposed, there are some significant cuts to education, areas of education. And I think part of it is thinking about the money that they had set aside for potential federal cuts that may happen. Mm-hmm. It doesn't look like that money is going to go towards education. So I appreciated the thoughtfulness of setting aside that $500,000 as like sort of a little cushion for us. But let's talk about a worst case scenario. You're talking about $9 million roughly in federal grants. Realistically, if like we lost Title II, which I think is the largest of the grants, right, would we be looking at borrowing against the reserve money that's there, or are we looking at cuts in our operations?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you. So Title II was the one that we heard most loudly about, that was definitely going away and all of that. So last year, heading into this year, we had 2 staff members, staff developers. It's largely a grant that houses money for professional development. And so you can put staff in there that provide professional development, right? I moved those 2 staff members out. It's about $400-something thousand of a grant. I moved those staff members out last year and put them into Alliance, anticipating that this coming year that would go away, just to start to balance the books and make sure we can account for everybody. So we would lose $400,000 in professional development monies, but it's not staff per se. And we would, we still have some money in Alliance that we've utilized for that, and some of our department budgets do handle some of that. So it would be a loss for sure. That one would not cripple us, I would say, the way that that grant is. We do have hedge in there. The $500,000 is to help offset some of that. My greater concern is really, even if the federal government didn't touch the grants, if our enrollment continues to dip in the way that it is, anything that's formula-based, formula-funded, it goes number of students, and then extra formula weighting for second language learners, high-need students, and so on. Special education. High-need students incorporates multi-language learners, free and reduced, and special education. Any one of those can put you in the bucket of high needs. And with that particular subgroup going down the way that it is, we could see some of the weighting in the formula change, and we get less dollars. And you would say, well, if you have less kids, less dollars, then it's a wash, right? And the answer really is no. It's like saying if you've got one waitress in a restaurant serving 100 customers, and you lose 25 customers, you still have to serve the rest of the restaurant. And that's kind of where we're at. We have a lot of students to still serve, and so incrementally across the district, across 12 grade levels, we're losing students, but it's not quite enough to start reducing the number of services and teachers that we have. It just makes the class size more tolerable at this point. So we still have to deliver those services. You still need the money for that. So that's my concern. But I have my eye on it. We did just get a letter from the state that Title I and the title grants would be held harmless next year. That just came out, and I need to look into that, and who sent it, and does this mean it's for sure? This is, I'd like to see a little bit more information on it, but I did hear that most recently. So we're, again, we'll continue to hedge. I didn't feel comfortable enough to pull that out of the budget when that letter came just recently. So we'll continue to monitor it. But, if we lost all of Title I, that would be devastating. And we'd be talking about a reserve dip and then a real strategy restructure for the following year. Title I is big. You've got about $4 million in there. You've got staffing and supplies for kids where they need it most. Yep.
Any other questions? Sean?
Number one, thank you very much for the hard work and the effort. Obviously, you guys care, and you're here till 6, 7 o'clock at night. So people sometimes think, oh, they make a lot of money. If you divided it by the hours you work, it would not be a lot of hours per money. That being said, I'm a taxpayer. I'm happy that we're saving $6 million because of vacant positions. How do we balance that versus the educational need? Are kids being undertaught, or class sizes bigger because of that? What's the effect of that $6 million vacancy?
Right. So right now, there's really not a change to class size right now. And again, if our enrollment, our class size, K-8, and we could certainly do an enrollment number evening and kind of go over those as well, because it's probably, would be beneficial. But across like K-5, for instance, and in some of our earlier grades, our numbers are really good. And if our numbers continue to go down, we might be able to collapse a class or two. So I would say right now, I'm not worried about the class size effect. Now, if we didn't get the 3 million, and I have all of those staff in there at the high school, and the high school definitely has larger class sizes in some special areas where we've had to supplement. So if we didn't get some of the funding that we needed, those class sizes, I would say 6-12 would be more vulnerable at getting bigger. But elementary, I think we feel pretty good right now about the elementary numbers.
Juanita?
I too want to thank you for all of the work going into the report. Do you see this as a conservative ask?
Yes. I would say, I would use the word responsible.
And so I guess, I'm thinking, it's great that we've streamlined and really trying to be efficient. And so realistically, remember our last budget, it was like keep the lights on budget. Is this enough to cover the needs of our students?
So Anita,
Yes.
what you're wrestling with is the same thing that I've wrestled with. Last year, you heard me come out and say, I need 45 kindergarten paras. I was out there, way out there on that, multi-million-dollar ask for the supports. The reality, though, and I have to straddle what I want to see happen, what we all might want to see happen, with the reality of being able to find 45 paras. We can't find, how many did you have to your agency next year? At least 40 that we cannot fill now. So the reality of me adding another 45 to that mix when we cannot hire ones now means that we'd end up agencying out the agencies. While we're thankful to be getting people in, it's not ideal. There's a lot of training that goes involved, that goes out the door the minute the agency person changes. So everything in my being, could I add $20 million to this budget? Absolutely. We could all have our places, but we have to build up our staffing a little bit more reliably than the pattern that we've experienced to date. In addition to that, I don't feel comfortable continuing to go to the city to ask for numbers that we're turning up in surpluses at the end of the year. We have to get a handle on this. And this is a responsible reset approach to getting there. We have a couple of budget cycles to get through to test these assumptions that we've placed into the budget. I hope and pray that we land on the dime at the end of the year. We might need to tap the reserves. Not something I would want to do, but it is there, which is why I'm a little more comfortable hedging closer than we've had to hedge before. But in the meantime, finish negotiating the rest of these couple of contracts. Let the word get out that we've put together some nice contracts. We worked really hard on those. They look better than they've ever looked before in years, right? They're really competitive. We've really brought people up. The market shot up on us, and we just trying to keep up with it. But we did that in this last round. We still have some work to do on the paras, and that's something that we're going to have to. That's going to be an ask in the next cycle to get to a place so that I can, if I need to put 30 paras in, maybe we put in 10 every year over the next couple of years. But right now, if I can put them in there and the city can give us the money for those, I can't get them, and I'll turn up surplus at the end of the year again. And so those are the things that we've wrestled with here as a group, and me especially, is that there are supports. We can't find school psychologists. We struggle finding really key critical positions that cause the rest of our staff to be a little bit stretched thin or agencying out for support. But we're slowly, I'm hopeful in this in the last couple of months, how many have you converted over, Kelly, from agency to about?
We onboarded about 20 district hires since the start of the year in special ed, another equal amount in ESL and SRBI. And then we are converting 10 agency employees. We're in the process right now to district hires, and that, we started a few, and my hope is to get 10 of them.
Yeah.
So that will bring our number up to 30 hires. And I've challenged the special ed team to get to 40 by the end of the year. So I am so thankful for the agency employees because it's been safety and meeting the educational needs of our students. But long-term, we want DPS hires. We want people that we can recruit, we can retrain, we can train, and then we can keep on to them. And that's why we've been working together as a team. So this contract has allowed us to have a slow trickle. I think we thought it'd be a flood, but it's been a slow and steady trickle. But we are also seeing on the other side, and I'm super appreciative to Kim and the rest of the negotiating team and Kara for supporting it and the board. We have seen a retention like I've never seen in that group. And so that's really positive.
So it's starting. It's not, not the floodgates we were hoping for, as Kelly mentioned. So we're proactively hedging that through the agency again this year, again, so that we're not having those salaries sit in salary line, the benefit line, and then while we're hiring agencies to hit another line. So they end up sitting in 3 different lines, and we're only using one of them.
Anybody else? Questions? Gladys?
Superintendent and your team, thank you for a beautiful document that's readable, colorful, and all my years been on the board, I should not use this type of language, but the document keeps getting gooder and gooder and clearer. So I appreciate that.
There's a whole team that works on that.
Thing that I really want to ask, and it might show up somewhere in this document, is there any type of figure that's connected to this building that will show up when we put the budget together and get down to City Hall with the politicians screwing through everything, trying to look for something to talk about? Is there anything associated with this building, of course, that will show up in this this budget?
Well, in this particular budget, the increase is on transportation. So as a result of the final phase of this opening, there's an increase in transportation, there's an increase in support staff, and there's an increase in academic staff and some administration. And did I say operational already? Operational staff. So there's a page that's chock full of positions related specifically to this building, in addition to some incremental other areas in the budget that are reflective of the fact that this building is still in its final phase.
Okay. And my last question is, and I think over the last year, I kept hearing we are moving position and we're putting people in the right position. So is that going to be clear up, or is that a continuous situation with us as a school district to keep moving people and assigning them to their right title or?
Oh, in the budget, yes. It's a great question. So we've done a tremendous amount of cleanup. I think this is the cleanest it's ever been right now. But every day, because the volatility, when you have grant money that's in one space, there's a location associated with that. There's a funding associated with a person. We're now using what are called control codes, so that now when something goes vacant, the control code really dictates where that position is and how much it was funded for. So we're using that as part of some of the options that are in our Tyler and iVision system. So it kind of anchors the position so we don't lose track of it. In addition to that, assigning the correct locations. A lot of movement in the system in the last year, and the movement of staff, it's hard to keep track of, so the control code does very much help with that. But right now, it's really the cleanest that it's ever been. And we've even decided, as we do the grants, and we move people into the grants and between general fund, in the grants, we're going to be embedding the control codes in there as well, so that it's clear to everybody, because there's certain people that work out of grants. They're a little different than some other folks. So it's just kind of the common language, the Rosetta Stone, if you will, that sits between all groups. If the person changes, the position still is anchored in the system. It's easier to keep track of. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? This is not the last night to ask questions. So take your packets home, look over it over the weekend, read through it. Monday night, we will have a Zoom.
Another opportunity.
And if you have questions over the weekend, email them to me so we can get the answers. Mike can look into them and get the answers for you on Monday night, so we're not having to, prolong the answers for you. So, look through it. Any questions, just email them to me, whatever the questions they are, and we'll get them over to Mike. And then Monday night, we'll meet again, and we'll go through all the other questions before we get to the meeting on Tuesday, where we will be voting on the budget. Okay? Good? Good plan? All right, I want to thank Kara, your entire team. I know the work that the long nights that you guys have put into really dissecting this budget. This is probably my 4 years on the board. This is the most in-depth that I've actually had, explained to me about just everything that's in this budget. It's very clear, and I appreciate all that work. I think even for us new members and the members that have been here, it's just important for us to understand it, because at the end, we're the ones that have to, put our stamp on it. So I appreciate all of you. Thank you. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
All
Okay.
right. Thanks.
If there's nothing else, motion to adjourn? So moved. Second? We're adjourned. Thank you.